Hola, muy buenos días. Bienvenidos a todos. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos a este webinar. Antes de comenzar, bueno, con la introducción, quiero que todos sepan que la ponencia será en inglés, pero tenemos la opción de los subtítulos. Hay un icono que tiene una doble C para que puedan poner subtítulos en español. Bueno, sin más preámbulo, empezamos. Buenos días y buenas tardes a todos. En nombre del CEBIEL quiero darles una calurosa bienvenida a este webinar y agradecerles muy sinceramente el tiempo que han reservado para nosotros. Hoy tenemos un motivo muy especial para celebrar este compromiso de Developing Human, conocida en español o mejor conocido este libro como Embriología clínica de Moore. Este libro cumple más de 50 años siendo la referencia mundial de la enseñanza de la embriología. 5 décadas de evolución constante, de nuevas ediciones, imágenes, recursos digitales y actualizaciones científicas que siempre han acompañado a generaciones enteras de estudiantes y hoy profesionales en el mundo de la salud. Para hablarnos de esta evolución y de los aspectos más destacados de sus mejores y más recientes, no podíamos tener mejor guía que uno de sus propios autores, el doctor Persaud, coautor del libro de Embriología clínica de Moore en esta 12ª edición. El doctor, Persaud, como todos sabemos, es una autoridad reconocida internacionalmente en el campo de la embriología y la genética clínica. Para hablarnos de ellos, y de este webinar tenemos 3 grandísimos moderadores a los cuales agradezco mucho y me voy a permitir presentar muy brevemente. Nos acompaña el doctor Norberto López Serna, el actual jefe del Departamento de Embriología de la Facultad de Medicina de la Autónoma de Nuevo León. Él es doctorado en Medicina por la Facultad de Medicina de la Autónoma de Nuevo León. Tiene una distinción del Consejo Nacional en Ciencia y Tecnología CONACYT como investigador nivel 1. Es coordinador de área básica de la licenciatura médico cirujano y partero de la Facultad de Medicina de la UANL, es profesor titular C de la Unidad de Aprendizaje de Embriología de la Facultad de Medicina de la Autónoma de Nuevo León, es profesor adjunto de recursos de embriología para residentes del Hospital Universitario, doctor José Eleuterio González, de la UANL, es miembro del Comité de Autoevaluación para los asistentes de acreditación de la licenciatura como médico cirujano y partero de la Facultad de Medicina de la Universidad Autónoma de Nuevo León. Es miembro del comité curricular de la licenciatura como médico cirujano y partero de la UANL y es autor y coautor de varios libros y capítulos de embriología. También nos hace un favor de acompañarnos el doctor Adrián García Cruz. El doctor García Cruz obtuvo su licenciatura en medicina en la Facultad de Medicina de la UNAM. Posteriormente completó una maestría en ciencias sociomédicas con especialidad en educación médica también en la UNAM. Su formación ha permitido desarrollar una carrera enfocada en la intersección de la medicina y la educación con un enfoque translacional. Ha participado en varios diplomados, incluyendo evaluación educativa en ciencias de la salud, bariatría médica, medicina estética, imagenología fetal, tricología clínica, tricofarmacología, transparente capilar. Estos diplomados están avalados por la UNAM y por la SEP, que subraya su compromiso con la actualización continua en su campo. El doctor es un destacado profesional en el campo de la embriología y la genética. Su último cargo fue como jefe de Departamento de Embriología y Genética de la Facultad de Medicina de la Universidad Autónoma Nacional de México, UNAM. Su trayectoria académica y profesional refleja un compromiso sólido con la educación y la investigación en ciencias de la salud. Por último, pero no menos importante, agradecemos muchísimo también al doctor Iván Vladimir Dávila Escamilla, quien tiene especialidad en medicina materno-fetal por el Hospital Universitario Dr. Francisco Eleuterio González en Monterrey, Nuevo León, Fellowship en Investigación y Neuroimagen Fetal en el Texas Children's Hospital de la Universidad de Baylor, Houston, Texas. Tiene un doctorado en bioética por el Instituto de Investigación en Bioética en Monterrey, Nuevo León, investigador nivel 1 en el Sistema Nacional de Investigadores CONACYT, y actualmente es profesor de embriología de la Facultad de Medicina de la Universidad Autónoma de Nuevo León. Doctor Norberto, por favor, todo suyo.
Muy bien. Voy a leerles el currículum del doctor Persaud. El doctor tiene un extenso currículum del cual les voy a leer algunos reconocimientos más destacados. Es profesor emérito y exdirector del Departamento de Anatomía Humana y Ciencia Celular, profesor de Pediatría y Salud Infantil, y profesor asociado de Obstetricia, Ginecología y Ciencias Reproductivas en el Max Rayde College of Medicine, Reddy Faculty Health Science, Universidad de Manitoba, en Canadá. De los reconocimientos más destacados tiene el de Henry Gray Elsevier Distinguished Educator Award 2010, máximo honor otorgado por la American Association of Anatomies en reconocimiento a una excelencia y liderazgo sostenidos en la enseñanza de la anatomía humana. Otro de los reconocimientos son Honored Member Award, American Association of Clinical Anatomists, por su destacada trayectoria y sus contribuciones significativas a la anatomía clínica, la embriología, la histología de la anatomía. Otro de ellos es el GCD Grant Award, Canadian Association of Anatomists, en reconocimiento a su servicio meritorio y sus logros académicos sobresalientes en las ciencias anatómicas. Tiene un Fellow de la American Association of Anatomists, distinción otorgada a miembros que han demostrado excelencia científica y contribuciones destacadas a las ciencias médicas. Otro de los premios, Queen Elizabeth II Golden Jubilee Medal, otorgada por el gobierno de Canadá y por su contribución significativa a la nación, la comunidad y sus conciudadanos. El Dr. Persaud es una figura de referencia internacional en anatomía, con una trayectoria reconocida tanto por instituciones académicas como gubernamentales, dentro de ello la corona canadiense, destacando su impacto en la docencia, la investigación y el servicio a la comunidad científica. It's a great pleasure to welcome Dr. Persaud today. Thank you for sharing your expertise and experience with our audience. We are delighted to gain insight into your perspective on the evolution of the developing human over more than 5 decades, as well as some of the most significant advances in this field. We may begin, Dr. Persaud, please.
Hello. Thank you very much for your very warm, kind, gracious introduction. It's a privilege, and I'm very happy to be here with you to share my experience with this remarkable book over the last 50 years. This book has to be very special because it is now been through 12 editions, first published in 1973. Some people describe it as a gold standard, revolutionary book in the sense it's revolutionized medical education or the way embryology was taught. But I will just only mention two things that I know of for sure, is that it's widely used in many countries. It's been translated in 11 languages. And this year and last year, it was listed, which is a special honor, in the Duty's core titles of health sciences for anatomy and embryology. Also, I'm not in marketing, but Amazon.com, Amazon has given it 5 stars, and apparently it is widely used by students. Here, my name is there as one of the authors, and the other name is Dr. Mark Tarsia, a former student from our department who graduated in anatomy and had embryology courses, two embryology courses with me. So in a way, he's a former student. So the original book, the architect, the person who started it was Dr. Keith Moore. Dr. Keith Moore wrote this book at the time, 1973. This book is 370 pages. The previous one I showed you, the first, the last edition, the 12th edition, is 503 pages. So it's a bigger book, but not necessarily more text. What you should bear in mind that this book was revolutionary because it bridged the gap between an abstract science, embryology, and clinical practice, medical practice. Students can relate to what was in there. Doctors can relate to it. Most of us have been taught embryology as a subject. We couldn't see the relationship to why we were taught these concepts, but this is how it was. The book has been highly recommended in the Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine, simply because it established a different paradigm for the teaching of anatomy, of embryology. It showed that embryology is alive. It explains a lot of what doctors encounter in the clinic and the way it was presented here. The American Medical Writers Association awarded Dr. Moore, because of this book, their award in 1974, a year after it was first published, because it says it revolutionized medical literature. In fact, it says it was a breath of fresh air in the writing of a book. The way it was presented, it was lucid, clear, and there were diagrams explaining things, the process of forming a structure within the embryo. Also, there were a few pictures, mostly black and white, because remember, this is a different generation. It's long before the internet was there, long before PowerPoint. There was no Google there. So one depended on literature that was available. These were books that were available. And the most knowledge you got there that you could incorporate in these books would be from attending conferences, meetings, and meeting of colleagues. And they would tell you new things, and a few medical journals you would get to see. So this is a remarkable book in that regard. This is Dr. Moore. I could spend another hour telling you about Dr. Moore and myself. I met Dr. Moore at a conference in 1969. I met him in New Orleans. He was, I would say, the best known anatomist, one of the best, if not the best known anatomist and embryologist in Canada. His research was in genetics. He was particularly interested in twins, all sorts of variations of twin, monozygotic, dizygotic, and especially monozygotic twins, because of all the possibilities of things that could go wrong there. His interest, though, his primary interest was in sex chromatin. And he is the person who discovered that sex chromatin is present in somatic cells. And from my generation, long before DNA technology, you could have determined the sex of an individual by taking a buccal smear, just a bit of tissue, scraping the inside of your mouth, and the tissues that were there were then examined. So here, Dr. Moore, 2 pages from, I've just randomly picked them out, showing you 2 babies here, discordant twins of a monozygotic pregnancy. And here is an ultrasound to show you it wasn't there in that edition, the first edition, but I'm showing you the possibilities of what is available now and what we have added as the years go by. It's the description of here also of thalidomide and other drugs, illicit drugs, that could cause anomalies. So there's this clinical correlation of different things. He was particularly interested in birth defects, teratology. This was our interest, joint interest. He persuaded me. He said that I should join his department. Eventually, that did happen. He became a mentor, a friend, which we remain right until his death. So, and we worked together. we worked on every edition, including the last edition, the 11th edition of the book. The 12th edition, Dr. Moore sadly passed away. Now, here he's showing, depicted here, we have two babies. And as you can see, one is larger than the other. And because of what is known as the twin transfusion syndrome, one at a disadvantage receive a much larger supply of blood or nourishment. And here I want to show you a very interesting picture. This was shortly after graduation. Here are two babies. These are monozygotic twins. They are my own children. That's me. In a younger age, I had black, dark hair, full head of hair, and in a hospital there, two babies. And the fellow you saw just there grew up healthy. They were normal weight, and they are in fact parents themselves. The young man is already 29 years old. The teacher, he was helping me just now. Dr. Moore, then, I helped with the book when it was in manuscript form. I helped with the third edition. He included me there as a contributor. He listed me. But then he asked me that I should be his co-author. And here I am in co-author with the fifth edition. And this edition is a contributor, where I added things that I feel that have clinical relevance. New boxes, the boxes that we know are so familiar with the book, the blue boxes. They were at first no boxes, in fact. They were pink. And then we changed them to green. And then we changed them to blue. And this is now standard iconic feature of the textbooks. This, in fact, has the pink boxes. This is Dr. Moore and I at conference where we were holding two books to show a special, because some sort of award we have got from the publishers. Here's some features I want to show you that make these books as the years went by. My mission now was to infuse as much as possible to clinical correlations, because even though I wore several hats. I was professor of anatomy and also had an appointment in pediatrics and obstetrics, but mostly with colleagues working in those departments who have been extraordinarily helpful. But there were features of the book that are unique. Here is a chapter, for example, on the ear and the eye. And at the end of every chapter, we put a summary, the bottom point, the main point, what is essential. Because we've quickly found out that clinical people would quickly look at this to get it, because they've had it already as part of their training, to just summarize what they have learned in order to prepare a presentation or whatever it is they may have in mind. So I began to spend a little more time with this summary. We expanded it. And then with each chapter were clinical cases relating to the chapter in order the student may test their skill, their knowledge, their understanding. On several occasions, I visited other medical schools. I found they were using this as part of the tutorial. So it served a useful purpose. And this again to show you features of the book that were not there before. Color pictures were added. We're still at an early stage in the production of the book. All we could do is to fix the content of the book, improve the added features like questions, here the clinical cases, which we discuss at the end of the book. So the student should be looking at that first. They look at this and they get the added skills. And here are things that were not possible at that time when they were just emerging in 70 ultrasonography, and MRI came later, and possibly I just wanted to show you that the book was moving in a different direction. Now, that's me there, younger days, Dr. Moore. And this is Dr. Torsha, who came with the 8th edition of the book as a contributor. He is the co-author, the two of us now, of the book. This figure here I have of this gentleman might impress some of the professors and doctors in the audience. That is the famous J.C.B. Grant's Atlas. Grant Atlas is there. He was a former head of the department. And so we stood there in front of this portrait of names of former head to take this photograph as a souvenir. Now, you wouldn't be able to see all the names of the contributors to the read. And I said, and many others, you'll have to look at the acknowledgements. I've received a tremendous amount of help from other colleagues, even countries like Argentina, Brazil, Mexico. I haven't been in contact with anyone, but they have given me insights, images to use. I contacted them because I wanted them to review a chapter for us with their background and knowledge. But this gentleman, who is not mentioned at all in any of that, he was my contact from the very beginning in the Department of Pediatrics. I worked very closely with him and medical genetics. And as a result, I want to acknowledge he's now retired. He's an emeritus professor doing all sorts of humanitarian work, Dr. Albert Chudley. But as I said, I wish I could have added all these names, because we can't claim credit for a book which essentially is the creation of what was in the literature. Previously, people wrote books before the internet era, copying from other books, sort of what you would say, cut and paste business. And now you have the scientific literature. There's nothing we have in this book here. I think this is the secret of its success, that was not published in the literature. Published, peer-reviewed, and validated. This was the important part. That it was accepted by the medical and scientific community. Often we'll go to the source and we'll confirm this further. Now, we were moving slowly into the era of, we said it's very nice, all of this. Then what is this book? It's text explaining things. You try to make it very lucid so the students would understand it and retain it. But this was the other thing, pictures. So we added a lot of figures, more figures. We tried to create a sort of a static animation, as you can see, series sequentially of what is happening at different levels. It is formation of the gut there, as you can see, and the GI tract, the yolk sac, and pinching of it, the foregut, midgut, hindgut, and you can see that there. Now, what I want to say is, here is an icon. And we started, this is a costly business to make these animation. We started in a very modest way. And we had these animations, there, pictures, and then it evolved. The book went digital with the digital era after the 80s, 90s it came about. And as you can see, there's an icon. And when you click on that, the animation comes up, which then moves the student from text to figure to animation. There's a bit more retention. This was very important. The student is learning things, and then we see a few anomalies relating to all of this that could have, like herniation of the gut, emphysema, or tracheal atresia, whatever they see with respiratory tract because of the partitions. it's nice when they can relate to what they've just read. They will retain that knowledge. So there are 18 animations. It started with 4, 6, 8, because we keep on, and of course we could add more. Now what I want to say is that when this was done was a different era again. 11th and 12th is very special because edition of the book, because they have all the animations, which if you have the digital copy of your book, of the book, you download it on your laptop, then you could have access to the animation as well as other skill testing media. For example, you have multiple choice questions, more cases, choose the best, drawings to aid. So there's a whole panorama of things that student can do in addition to what just reading the textbook. The 18 here, like the last one I showed you there, chapter would be chapter 9, and then you get that there. You click wherever there's a click, means it will help you to understand things better. Then what happened? This book was selected by the British Medical Association and highly commended. And I have to read this to you because I would forget it. I can't remember all of this. This is definitely useful. The book has been reviewed. It delivers the world's, I didn't want to say that myself, but I'm just reading it here. It delivers the citation to this award. It delivers the world's most complete, visually rich, and clinically oriented coverage of this complex subject, written by some of the world's most famous, but I would say all the people who have assisted us, not just the 2 or 3 authors. It presents week by week, and that's a beautiful thing, using the Carnegie stages of the embryo, week by week, stage by stage, of how the organs develop. Now, if you standardize that, the first 8 weeks of development, you have 23 stages, then investigators, professors, practicing clinicians could relate to that, especially when you get to the problem of doing ultrasonography during pregnancy. Then you could say, this is how old the embryo is, or the fetus. But then it says, this is definitely useful for undergraduate medical students or clinicians in obstetrics and gynecology. It makes excellent use of full color illustrations. This is all new we've added with the Wearing edition, and includes a comprehensive list of references. Now, this wouldn't be necessary because people go to the internet, and includes very useful for this large text, which is not exactly pocket size. It isn't. It's a large book. That's why you could download it to computer and refer it, because you could, with the computer, you have your book. The computer does 2 things that with technology is all advancing now. You could mark, highlight, and you can go from text to speech capability. In other words, you don't even need to read the book. Sit with a cup of coffee or tequila, and I have mine here. And you follow that. Now, this was the part I find very, very satisfying for now. I struggled to find any weaknesses. This is an excellent book. So I think we've done well in putting things together as best as we can, but it's just changing constantly, and you have to be ahead through the literature. Now, this is to show you, now we have 21 chapters. It was 19 chapters in the first book, the first edition, 370 pages. Ours is now bigger, but a lot of figures that were not there before, which helps students. This was to remind you, look, we have 2 chapters here new. We have an entire chapter, massive in its size, which often could serve as a little monograph with a lot of clinical genetics, cytogenetics, and also teratology, because it's an increasing area for the practicing doctor to advise patients. So there is human birth defects, but here this is I thought was a very important area. I didn't realize how much it would become, especially with therapy, that if you do the pathway, the technology, CRISPR technology, stem cells, this is just to remind me that that possibility is there. So these are books that incorporated, show you that it changes again. This I think I came from South America. And here is at the back of the book, you can find a summary of what are the essential new features of that 11th and 12th edition. This was the ultimate, I feel, what one can do at this time, at this stage, with what information we have. I point out we have the fully narrated full color animation that help you to see, at least you can see. You have the stage by stage, which I know ultrasonographers in Canada here, or Manitoba at least, are using. You have the new technology here now, molecular biology, and there you have the reconstruction imaging you can do in different ways. And we have the details how molecular biology has affected the clinical practice. I recall once someone telling me, a pediatric cardiac surgeon, I said, we have to worry a lot about what happens with moleculars. He said, that's very important because that will help us to deal with treatment and management of patients without going through in an invasive procedure. And here is another young man, I was 24 years old, just coming to the end of my medical course. I like all that hair I have on my head, but anyhow. And here I have a bundle of joy that has brought happiness to people. The mom, dad, and the rest of the family. This baby has a history. And the history is this book with the breath of life in it. For the history, the mystery of life, this is the developed human, and this is the developing human. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Dr. Persaud, thank you very much for being with us today. And it has been a true honor to hear from someone whose work inspired a generation of physicians around the world. We sincerely appreciate your time, your generosity, and your willingness to share your knowledge and experience with us. Thank you, Doctor, again. And now I would like to move on our question and answer session. And if I may, I'd like to read some of the questions that we have for you, Doctor.
I didn't get that.
Let me see which question. Well, I have a question here, and it's, what is your view of the role of AI in embryology education today?
I think the acoustic is a problem.
Doctor, ¿podrías repetirla, por favor?
Okay, can you repeat the question? What is your view of the role of AI in embryology education today?
Well, this is that's depending how you're using. For example, with those animations, to give you in our area with the embryology. If what we use there, that's what I was saying, that period of time the animations were made was simply a lot of drawings that was costly and created problems with the stages, going from one stage to the other. With AI, you could generate a whole series, morphing. You could morph these drawings and diagrams and actually involving real embryos. Someone in Netherlands, in Holland, is doing that, in fact. She's in Leiden, and she uses real embryo sections. That's as far as the teaching of embryology. Clinical applications is artificial AI. I'm sure there are a lot of possibilities there, but I wouldn't want to go there because I'm not a practicing obstetrician or ultrasonographer in the care. But with embryology, the fact that you could take, there are in the collection, Carnegie collection, embryos. I've looked at some of them when it was in Washington and moved to Seattle. These could be taken exactly as they're there in the sections and morph in such a way that students will actually see, instead of drawings, line drawings, color drawings, they will see the actual changes within the embryo. As far as teaching is concerned, the other thing is what students generate in exams or as projects, depending on how teaching is done. I usually like to discuss when I present an abstract concept in embryology. It's difficult for students to keep that in their head and say, well, what am I going to do with this? Why do I need to know that? Then you show the relevance of it. And I don't know if AI could generate that response so that students have something tangible. And very often they'll produce, if you give them as a project, they will produce, it's really the work of so many other people as their own. And that's why you will have answers, 4 or 5 people giving you an answer that are essentially the same. So I don't know, clinically, there must be a big area for this, but I wouldn't go there because I'm not competent and I don't have the experience of it. I started my career. I said, well, I wanted to be an obstetrician gynecologist, but fate took me in a different direction. I became an anatomist, and within anatomy, I got interested in teratology, because at that time, you must recall, in the 60s, was when the thalidomide episode started. The 2 people, in fact, I know them both well. One is McBride and one is Wen Lenz. And one of the images in the book we have is actually from Lenz. They were the first one. And, it's as a young student, you get excited about it. This is, you have your patients to see, but you see a child born that looks entirely different, and you try to understand why this is so. And that was my interest. So I pursued that further.
Doctor Iván, ¿podrías continuar con la pregunta 1, la de what advice, por favor?
Yes, sure. Professor Persaud, I'm glad to meet you. I will read a question for you. What advice would you give to a student who are just beginning to study embryology?
Well, the first advice is you should get a copy of our book. And because it's not, and you go to your lectures, of course, and listen to your classes, but you need something to refer to. You have your computer. Students always have their computer. laptop or a cell phone. I don't know how this would go, and check and confirm things you've heard. But it should be to a goal. The embryology should not just what you ask yourself, why am I studying embryology? I would say because you're going to be a doctor, you'll see patients, and the patients will have problems relating to when embryology has gone bad, wrongly. Dysembryology. The heart, instead of having 4 chambers, will have maybe only 3, or a more common condition, the aorta and the pulmonary trunk, and the blood will take to the lungs and the rest of the body. They could be coming out from a different part of the ventricle. The conditions of those transposition of the aorta. You should be able to at least explain that to your patient. If you're a surgeon, this is something you'll have to deal with. You might see it in the ultrasound or MRI, whatever is done. The point is, you study this. I would assume that you're going to go into a medical field, work as a doctor, or you'll be teaching students. But that's the other possibility. And the 2 things you do, or a researcher working in the field of developmental biology. So my advice would be, you get a good textbook. There's several published by Elsevier and other publishers, and you read the one that you can relate to, mostly that you find lucid, that has a lot of pictures in them, because that's what it is. It's a visual subject. To read a book in embryology, let's say in my generation, and in lectures, was essentially dull. It's like dry. And so you add life to it by saying, this is why you're doing it, because it relates to clinical problems I will encounter later.
Thank you, doctor. I'm going to continue with the next question. And the question is, which area of embryology research excites you the most right now, and why?
Can you repeat that, please?
Which area of embryology research excites you the most right now, and why?
Es que tu audio suena un poco raro, pero no te preocupes, doctor. Doctor Persaud, I repeat, which area of embryology research excites you the most right now, and why?
A lot of the classical work, of descriptive embryology. All of us who have gone through medical school have had lectures on those. We know that this fused with this, and this formed this, and the rotation. But we should exploit knowledge we have now, molecular biology. The 2 areas, the clinical, that's what I'm saying. The clinical part of embryology, what the physician sees as an ultrasonographer, as an obstetrician, that's an important part. So that would be one. But the other part, these are the 2 parts that I think complement each other, because one would lead to therapy, as I told you about the cardiac surgeon, a pediatric, told me, there are things we can do if we know the molecular biology. Now we know something about the formation of the diaphragm, the molecular biology, that it's more than the 4 parts, but how it starts, where it begins. The stem cells, CRISPR technologies, gene editing, these are all exciting. So I would move away from the more traditional area of looking at embryos only, but looking at the molecular evidence that are involved in the embryo to produce the structure you see there that I'm showing here, the baby. So as I would say, get into more biochemistry for a start. Make sure you have a solid foundation in that. And then you look at the molecular tools. That will be for the future. And that is also very linked up with artificial intelligence.
Thank you, doctor. Doctor Iván, ¿podrías ayudarnos con la última, que sería la número 7, por favor?
Ok. ¿Puedo hacerle una pregunta al doctor Persaud?
Sí.
Dr. Persaud,
Yes,
I'm an obstetrician right now.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, I have to confess that I learned embryology from your book more than 20 years ago, and I get in love with developing human. Now I'm professor of embryology, and I have a favorite topic or organ to me. I would like to know if you have a more excited organ of developing organ or embryology process that you enjoy to teach or to describe in your book. A favorite one, or which one do you excite the most about the developing human?
I think the one that we always have to go and examine very carefully again, the literature, the medical literature published, is the heart and the brain, nervous system. The nervous system and the heart are recurring because there are constant changes there. People are how valid the literature is there, the results and findings, time will tell us, but those are two areas that one could work in for a very long time if you're doing research. And I'm sure as an obstetrician, twinnings and so with organs, I think the brain, children are born with varying degrees of brain intellectual problems, and cardiac problems are not uncommon. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Gracias, doctor. Thank you, doctor Persaud. Vamos a continuar con la rifa de los ebooks. Para terminar nada más, tenemos 2 preguntas que vamos a hacer. El doctor Adrián me va a ayudar con la primera y el doctor Iván me ayudará con la segunda. Por favor, en el chat solo pongan la respuesta y valoraremos quién contesta, obviamente, correctamente, pero también quién lo hace con mayor velocidad. Y el equipo del CEBIER se pondrá en contacto con ustedes para hacerles llegar su ebook. Doctor Adrián.
Ok, gracias. Creo que escucho mejor. La pregunta sería, ¿cuáles son 2 características principales de la etapa embrionaria?
Gracias, doctor. No te preocupes. Ahorita revisamos el chat y ahora el doctor Iván.
Okay, my question is related with the last comment that Professor Persaud said. I will say it in English first, if you agree. Which organ of the human body remains particularly susceptible to teratogenic insults throughout the entire gestational period? Not only the embryology period, also the fetal period. You can find this in a table at the beginning of the books, Professor Persaud. Which organ or which system? ¿Qué órgano o qué sistema es el más vulnerable a teratogénesis o algún insulto durante todo el periodo embrionario y el periodo fetal? ¿Cuál de los órganos y sistemas?
Listo, perfecto. Gracias, doctor Iván. En el chat, bueno, están apareciendo las respuestas. El equipo valorará cuál es la correcta y cuál fue la más rápida. Dr. Persaud, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, for your kindness. Thank you very much. Gracias a todos por su asistencia, doctor Norberto, doctor Iván, doctor Adrián. Muchas gracias por hacer posible esto. Y for the last, Dr. Persaud, would you like to say the last words for the students or teachers? Maybe one advice?
Yes. Well, the first thing I would like to say is I thank you all for taking the time to meet with me. And because it has been a pleasure, I enjoy it. It means a lot to me that you, on the continent, I mentioned to you my roots. My roots are in Guyana, British Guyana. That's where I was born, and I spent my formative years. And I have traveled a long distance through many experiences. I've done so many things, and I return back now to you. We're now in Mexico. So we're back in South America. So I thank you for that privilege. And I wish the students that when I left my home country, there was no university there, no college. It was a poor country, of course. Now it's wealthy because of oil. But all possibilities are there. You have dreams and hope, and you plan. So the advice I give to the medical students, you have your dreams, pursue them. You have to work, be honest, be sincere, and be kind, and you'll reach that end. You'll achieve what you want in life. Then it's not only medicine. Our life is not only medicine, it's also living.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Muchas gracias.
Adiós.
Gracias, adiós. Gracias a todos los que nos acompañaron. Un placer.